The Youngstown Regional Chamber's economic development work revolves around the retention and expansion of existing companies and the attraction of new investment to the Mahoning Valley, as well as several community initiatives. Our work over the past few years has resulted in several 2018 company announcements, totaling over $120 million worth of investment, the creation of 215 new jobs, as well as the retention of 838 existing positions, all of which is to occur over the next 3 years.
One of the retention projects that we have managed over the past couple of years and are so excited to see nearing completion is the new Pure Foods Fulfillment Center in North Jackson. We, through a past business retention and expansion visit, learned that the company was outgrowing their current facility in Austintown on Victoria Road and would need to build a new fulfillment center to house those 100 employees. So they did a search across the eastern United States, and we were so pleased that we were able to help them make that investment and grow here in the Mahoning Valley. The facility is nearing completion right now, and we look forward to a grand opening in 2019. Another exciting project that we look forward to in 2019 is the construction of the new aluminum remelt facility in Hubbard Township at Elwood Engineered Castings.
What the Chamber did was they brought in some special resources with databases, and they did a lot of research, marketing research for us to show us the growth of aluminum, how much aluminum is being supplied to the market. And they really help with the final decisions that the market is there.
2019 is going to be a busy year, and it's going to ramp up very quickly. Our design phase is nearing completion. We have a good idea of what we can do with the existing facility, and now we're starting to put that onto paper. We're ordering equipment, and starting after basically the new year, we'll start to be digging holes and starting to put foundations in, and from that point it ramps up, because once foundations are in, we have to assemble the equipment and then commissioning. So our goal is to have equipment operational by the end of 2019 in December, so that we can be servicing the market that's in the area at the beginning of 2020.
And we're so pleased that they chose to move forward with that investment, and so we look forward to a groundbreaking celebration early next year and then construction to follow.
With the recent grand opening of the Lordstown Energy Center, we are pleased the investors will be moving forward with a second $900 million investment known as the TRUMBULL Energy Center, set to break ground in early 2019.
So we have analyzed and asked ourselves the question, how many coal plants and how many nuclear plants could potentially close in Ohio? We discovered that we need on order of about another 15 Lordstown-sized facilities in Ohio. So we will be pursuing other projects, and I'm sure others in our industry will do the same. And again, given the economy of scale, each one of these facilities represents about a $900 million investment. So we're looking at 15 more of those here in Ohio.
An attraction project that we look forward to finalizing with a formal company announcement in 2019 is the TJX HOMEGOODS Distribution Center. We were initially contacted in early 2016 to conduct a site search for an investment called Project Wagon. At that time, we were aware of the scope of the project, but not the company. In late 2017, following the site selection of a nearly 300-acre site, we supported the local community throughout the rezoning process. We are currently in the pre-construction phase, and we look forward to a shovel going in the ground in early 2019 to celebrate this $170 million investment that will result in the creation of over 1,000 jobs.
We launched several economic development policy initiatives in 2018. We did the Mahoning Valley's inaugural Columbus Drive-In and the Mahoning Valley's inaugural DC Fly-In. And we took about 80-some business, community, and government leaders to Columbus to advocate for capital budget projects. 8 projects were represented on the trip, and 6 of those organizations were able to secure funding. Statewide, only 25% of all capital projects received funding. And then for the DC Fly-In, we were very successful at 3 of our initiatives. One is trying to attract a missile defense site to Camp Garfield, formerly Camp Ravenna, and one was securing funding and increasing activity at the Youngstown Air Reserve Station. The third policy initiative was revitalizing the Mahoning River.
But there was really one primary takeaway about the Chamber's efforts in the Eastern Ohio Military Affairs Commission, It would really be that, but for the existence and the creation of these programs by the Chamber, I really think we would be continuing to see a decline in the overall economic impact of the missions that we have in Eastern Ohio.
What made our message very clear and very strong is the support that the Chamber rounded up. We had 30 to 40 business leaders and community leaders all coming down there together. And the feedback we got from DC and everybody we met with, we had a unified voice, which again really stresses the importance of what we're trying to do here in the area.
We look forward to continuing the momentum in 2019 when we will make the Columbus Drive-In and DC Fly-In annual events. We also look forward to continuing our partnership with America Makes to make sure that the recommendations in the Ohio Bold Report are carried forward by the next governor and next General Assembly so that the entire state can benefit from the potential growth in the economy around additive manufacturing right here in Youngstown.
The Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber's Economic Development staff is currently managing $2.1 billion worth of pending investment that could result in the creation of 1,700 new jobs. This total does include the pending investments from the TRUMBULL Energy Center and TJX HOMEGOODS, but the remaining $1 billion consists of 20 individual industrial projects, which is not something I have seen throughout my economic development career. Not only the value of the projects, but also that they are all industrial in nature and the majority of them in manufacturing. What this tells us is manufacturing is alive and well in the Mahoning Valley.
I'm going to make a few change-ups. Obviously, we have some folks not here, so we're going to mix it up, and we'll keep you guessing on what's coming next. The Chamber's grateful to have a longtime corporate sponsor and friend in First National Bank. The organization has stepped up for us continually and supported so many of our initiatives and endeavors, and we certainly couldn't have events like this one without them. It's truly a pleasure to introduce from First National Bank, Senior Vice President and Commercial Banking Team Leader, Mr. Chris Colella.
Good morning, everyone. Before I get started, in light of this week's Veterans Day celebrations, and I'm not sure of the mix that we have here, but I'd like to especially thank any past and present service members we have in the audience for their service. And if you are either a past or present service member, could you please stand? Thank you. We couldn't be here today and the freedoms that you have afforded us, so thank you very much. First National Bank is proud to once again partner with the Regional Chamber and sponsor this annual Economic Forecast Breakfast. It's truly a wonderful event that has been extremely informative and beneficial to all of us that have attended in the past. On behalf of First National Bank and the Chamber, thank you all for being here in what we hope again is a value-added discussion. The trends of the economy, both local, regionally, and nationally, impact all of us in what we do. And between Chris and Dan, I'm sure that we will leave here today with additional information to use. If I could please take a few moments to talk about the bank. As the recently appointed commercial banking team leader for Mahoning, Trumbull, and Columbiana counties, it's my pleasure to represent the bank this morning. Several of my bank colleagues are here with us this morning as well, along with customers and clients that we enjoy. These bankers that we have here today and that I've worked with are some of the best bankers and line of business partners that I've had the pleasure of working with in my 30 years at the bank. And that is correct, 30 years at the bank. I know that's kind of unheard of in today, but it's been a good ride and it's a great bank. Our employees are similar to you. First National Bank is dedicated to improve the quality of life in the region, and our mission is committed to help accomplish that. First National Bank has nearly 400 branches across 6 states, including nearly 30 of the most important branches right here in Northeast Ohio. And the importance of those branches you could see in the folks that are here today. I'd like to just take a minute to introduce just a couple. Jeff Bechtel, he's our Regional Market Executive in charge of commercial banking throughout Ohio. Thanks, Jeff. And Boyd Pethel, it's so important that this region is to him. Lifelong resident of Cleveland. Boyd is the Executive Vice President in charge of commercial banking for Cleveland, which is near and dear to his heart, Pittsburgh, and the Annapolis, Maryland region as well. So I hope that shows the commitment to the Valley that the bank has today. Our branch network and industry-leading product lines are complemented with state-of-the-art technology to give clients a convenient, consistent, and flexible banking experience. Our product lines provide financial solutions in commercial, consumer, and private banking to include a sophisticated menu of treasury management products as well. Our wealth management and succession planning services are second to none. Full lines of insurance products that are delivered by some of the most consultative agents and brokers in the industry, and an international banking platform that is used successfully by many of those businesses in attendance today. Our bankers spend tens of thousands of volunteer hours and are board members of organizations that call to their passions. Those volunteer hours are also followed by tens of thousands of dollars that the bank has donated to help support more than 100 of local causes and organizations. We understand that we are only as strong as the communities we serve, and we will continue to strive to improve ourselves as well as our communities that we share with all of you. If you already do business with First National Bank, we thank you for the opportunity to partner with you and satisfy your financial service needs. If you would open the door for us to come in, but have not yet established a business relationship with us, we thank you for opening the door and ask that you trust us enough to start to do business as well. Finally, if you don't know who we are and we don't know you, I apologize for that. We want to get to know everyone in the Valley, and we hope you feel the same. And I respectfully ask that you afford us the opportunity, at a minimum, to learn more about your business or organization. That is one of the most enjoyable things that we do every day, is to speak with business owners and learn about what they do and how we possibly could help. I promise if you let us in, it will be worth your while, and I commit that we will treat you with respect and top-notch customer service. Thank you for your time and for attending this morning. It's now my honor to introduce my colleague who will be giving one of the forecasts this morning. Chris Swiklinski is a Senior Vice President and Director of Portfolio Management for First National Trust Company. In his role, Chris provides sophisticated investment solutions for high net worth individuals and institutions in Northeast Ohio and beyond. He also leads a team of portfolio advisors who help clients reach their financial goals. Chris resides in Westlake with his family. He's earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Bowling Green University and is a member of the Cleveland Society of Securities Analysts. Chris enjoys volunteering his time to coach youth baseball and basketball. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming again Mr. Chris Swiklinski.
Good morning. Oh, come on. Don't make me require crowd participation. Good morning. All right, perfect. Let's see if I know how to work this thing. Okay, so I always start out with a quote, most people that know me, and I just want to point out that this quote does not apply to economists at First National Bank. So I was here last year, and as many of you might remember, it was right after President Trump was elected, and we took a look at what market performance and GDP looked like, and some of the scenarios that history showed for a Republican president and a Republican Congress. We'll take a look at how that worked out this year. And we also focused a little bit on free trade, and that's something that we probably heard a little bit about in the last year. It seems to be a million tweets about free trade. And what we talked about was, you looked at some of the people that were on President Trump's cabinet at the time, and they're pretty skeptical that free trade was actually free. So we'll talk a little bit about that today too. Again, we're going to look at what the scenarios from history look like for GDP as well as the markets for a Republican president and a split Congress. I'm also going to dive into trade a little bit more. First of all, let's define the problem. Is there a problem? Does anybody think there's a problem? Okay, we'll take a look. And a lot of focus is on China, and we're going to talk about why that focus is on China. And then the next question we get when we start talking about how the administration is addressing the problem with China with the tariffs is, are tariffs going to cause a lot of inflation? And we don't think it is, but we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the last question we get from clients a lot is there still time to make money in this market? We're pretty far along in a bull market and an economic boom. So is there still time to make some money? So let's look at how things turned out. Under a Republican Congress with a Republican president, we expected GDP to be a little bit below average. And right now, on an annualized basis, we're running at about 2.4%, but we've seen a lot of strength in the last couple of quarters here, so that really seems to be accelerating. Going forward, under Republican president and a split Congress, again, we'd expect GDP, by historical standards, again, this is from history, to be about 2.85%, a little bit below average, but again, a little bit better than what we expected under the Republican Congress and Republican president. Little different on the market side. So we talked about last year under Republican president and Republican Congress, we expected the market to be above average. And at 14.1% since Mr. Trump was elected, it's been good. I will point out that October was a pretty ugly month, and people that are working in securities in here would probably attest to that. It's been kind of rough. So this number was a lot bigger at the end of September. Going forward, with a Republican president and a split Congress, we've seen historically the market not do as well as average. So that is what it is. I will say that history does not guarantee future results. That was for my compliance guys, so smile over here. So trade and inflation. It seems to be the subject of a lot of tweets and a lot of anxiety. It's on the news every day. But is it really that big of a deal? And is it going to have that much of an effect on your day-to-day life? We would say no. Some of you might remember this slide from last year. Clearly, since the early 90s, there's been a deterioration of our foreign trade balance. It's pretty glaring. And when you dive into that a little bit more, it's pretty glaring where the biggest deficit is. China has 3 times the deficit of our next trade partner. Now, is there a reason for that? Was that by design? I think we would argue that to some extent it is. China's been very aggressive at building their export business. You look at where China was back in the mid-'80s, and the trade deficit was pretty balanced with the United States. But by putting in policies such as Made in China 2025, where China really incented the development of manufacturing in their country for higher value-added goods, and they help nurture these businesses along. It really was an effective way to build manufacturing in China. They also had things like joint venture requirements, where if you wanted to do business in China, you have to do a joint venture with a Chinese company. And if you want to do that business with a Chinese company, you have to share your intellectual property. It's not a great deal for a lot of people. So the administration, again, as I mentioned, has decided to address this with tariffs. And the word tariff scares a lot of people. And it gets a lot of news, and again, a lot of anxiety out there about tariffs. And the biggest anxiety for our clients seems to be, is it going to cause inflation? So we had the first National Investment Advisors Research Group take a close look at this. So this is what we have so far. So when you look at the percentage of tariffs, 25 in the first round, 10 in the second round, and we're not completely sure the third round is going to hit yet. But you start to add up the numbers. in worth of goods, you're probably looking at about $517 billion at most that this is going to affect. It's a big number. You do a dollar increase on that $517 billion, and you're looking at probably about $59 billion, worst case scenario, a dollar increase in billions in worth. But then you apply that to the total imports, and it's not a huge number. I mean, we think worst case scenario, it's going to potential price increase of about 2% on total imports. I think a lot of people are surprised when I say 2%. But let's take it the next step. So when you talk about the potential increase and compare that to the total economy, we have a pretty big economy at $18.6 trillion. You're really looking at, worst case scenario, we think we're going to get an inflation increase possibly of about 0.31%. Not a huge number. I think a lot of our clients that we share this with are surprised by that. Our current inflation rate's about 2.17%, pretty subdued. So we don't have a ton of inflation out there right now. So our new hypothetical inflation rate, we're looking at somewhere in the 2.34 to 2.48%, just given the effects of tariffs. And if you look at our economy right now, the current wage increases are wonderful. We've got a lot of momentum in wage increases for people out there in the workforce. So when you compare the inflation rate to current wage increases, that gives us a little bit more confidence that things are okay. So is there still time to make money in this market? And I'd love these two pictures. Black Friday, that is where I will not be on Black Friday. That might be my personal hell. And the stimulus bill. I wanted to use this slide just because I don't think people understand how big that stimulus bill was. And we still haven't seen a lot of it hit the economy. So some of it has. You've talked about the tax increases, but I'll talk about what we still have to look at going forward. Now let's talk about the consumer. So many of you probably know that as you look at GDP breakdown for the United States, our economy is really driven by the consumer. And we're at about almost 70% of GDP is consumer-oriented. So clearly, the consumer is a very important piece of economic growth in the United States. Now, when we look at the consumer, one ratio that we think is extremely important is real median household income. I have a professor from YSU in the audience, I know. Can you tell me what real median household income is, Carrie? No, she's not going to let me call her out. It's just the inflation. Your income adjusted for inflation, and it's kind of a feel-good number. I mean, really, if you have a high real median household income number, that means your income's going up more than inflation. So you go to the store, and you can buy more stuff. People feel pretty good about that. But there's two other attributes of this number that we always like to point out with clients. One, it's been a really good pretty good leading indicator for recessions. So if you look at the last 3 recessions in the United States, going back to the mid-'80s, you had about a year to a year and a half lead time when you saw real median household income start to go down. And we haven't seen that yet. It looks pretty strong right now. And the current numbers are really good. The other aspect of real median household income that we look at is the effect on the market. So we've noticed there seems to be correlation with the market when real median household income is rising, at least since the mid-'80s, we've had positive stock markets. So 2 good reasons to think that going forward, the economy, we don't see a recession in sight. And as long as this real median household income keeps rising, we're pretty optimistic about things. Let's take a look at the pieces of real median household income, and one is consumer inflation. As I mentioned, it's pretty subdued. And we talked about what effect that tariffs might have on inflation, so might take it to the 2.34 to 2.48 range. But there are some things kind of holding inflation back, and one being rents. We're seeing the rents of apartment buildings and things kind of stabilize. Those were growing at a pretty high rate for a while, so those should be keeping inflation down going forward. Oil prices. I know our shale guy is going to talk about oil prices here. We were talking earlier about what he's seeing. Those have come down a lot lately. So that's going to be another thing that'll help keep inflation in check. And the last is, I'll put Amazon. I'm not advocating Amazon, but one thing we talk about when we talk about inflation is competition. The competition has been dramatic in the last 10 years. And a lot of it's internet-based. I mean, we look at how Amazon works, and let me give you the best example, I think, of how powerful competition is and where we've come. My 80-year-old father will drive his prized Honda CR-V to Walmart. He'll park in the furthest parking space he possibly can find because he doesn't want to get ding on the door. Then he'll borrow my mother's phone because he doesn't have a phone. And he'll go into Walmart and he'll actually check the prices in Walmart against Amazon. I saw him doing this one day. I'm like, oh my God, we've truly hit peak competition. So we think inflation is pretty much under control. The next part of the equation is wage increases. And as I said, wage increases have been pretty robust lately. We're running about 3.1% on a wage increase on an annual basis. Now, we meet with a lot of clients, and a lot of our customers, especially the business, tell us that they're having a hard time finding skilled workers. Does that sound familiar? People having a hard time finding just really skilled workers, people that come to work. Yeah, it's crazy. So we're seeing kind of a tug of war right now. So we've got the skilled workers, and we're seeing pretty large increases for some of these skilled workers, some of the labor unions, the electrical workers and such. But the other side of that equation is we're seeing the baby boomers retire. So you've got a massive amount of middle managers out there. And these middle managers are making a fair amount of money. So they're retiring and they're being replaced by people making far less, kind of doing the same job. Maybe not as good, but doing the same job. So we got a tug of war going on here. So we think this is a really good number. We feel good about it. We think it's a good thing for the economy. But we don't think it's out of control. I know a lot of people worry about when inflation starts to, or when wage inflation starts to increase, that inflation is going to rise. But until you get to that kind of 4% range, we would start to get concerned. But at this level, we've got strong wage increases and we've got pretty low inflation. Makes us pretty comfortable. And the last thing I'll talk about, I know you'll be sorry to see me go, but the last thing I'll talk about is the stimulus. So let me put this into context. So the tax cuts that we had back in December, when you add everything up, we're looking at about $850 billion of stimulus going in the economy. You compare that to the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 at $787 billion. And that should give you an idea how much stimulus is going into the economy. And a lot of this hasn't hit. The area I would focus on is the repatriation. We spent a lot of time in our research group trying to figure out, where's all this money going to go that's coming back in the country. You've got $500 billion coming back. We've seen a lot of dividend increases, so that's a good thing. We've seen companies going out and buying back their own stock, and that also helps keep the market going. But we really think is going to happen in the next year and a half is we're going to see mergers and acquisitions really pick up. So it takes time to find companies to buy. So companies found out about the tax cut and the repatriation back in December of last year, and they start looking for other companies to buy. It takes you some time to find a company, do your due diligence, make a deal, get it done. So we think really you're going to start to see more mergers and acquisitions start to hit probably towards the mid to end of next year. And that has certain implications in how you're investing, at least in the stock market, and where you want to invest. So 2018 conclusions. So history tells us at least that we'll have better GDP growth, but still below average. And we'll have a below average stock market. Again, we don't necessarily agree with that. When you focus on trade, it's pretty clear we have a pretty large deficit in trade, and it hasn't gotten better even recently. And the focus is really China there, because that is where the biggest deficit is. And when we talk about tariffs, we don't think that tariffs are going to result in any kind of runaway inflation at this point. Now, they it might get uglier, but what we see now, we're not very concerned. And lastly, is there still time? We would argue there is. there's still time to make money in these markets. We see a really healthy consumer, and inflation is pretty at bay. And again, the fiscal stimulus, all that money that's was put in the market about a year ago, we think there's still a lot to come here. So, do we have any questions? None? Okay, well, you have to ask that. So my 15-year-old son is in the audience. My greatest fear is him getting his driver's license. Otherwise, I don't have a lot of fears. Seriously, my greatest fear is probably debt. When you look throughout the world, there's a lot of debt out there. Whether it's at the government level or at the consumer level, debt, especially when you have a downturn, makes me a little nervous. You look at the emerging markets, there's been a lot of dollar-denominated debt issued in the last 10 years, a tremendous amount. And you've probably noticed the dollar's been pretty strong lately. So as interest rates come up, as our Federal Reserve raises interest rates, and the dollar goes up in value, that really hurts these emerging markets. So I'm a little concerned about emerging markets at this point. I'd say that was probably my greatest fear. Anything else? No? Oh, good. They seem to be pretty focused on keeping going at the pace they're at. Most of the discussions I've seen come out of the Fed recently doesn't indicate any slowdown. It's going to be depend on the market too. If we see a challenge in emerging markets, and we see some kind of a debt challenge in the emerging markets, we see a problem come out of China, that can change. But right now, they seem right on track. Are you pulling me? All right, well, thank you for your time today. Again, I appreciate you inviting me back. If you have any questions about how you'd want to invest in this environment, please grab your First National Bank representative, and we would love to meet with you. That was for you, Greg. All right, have a good day.
Night. All right, thanks, Chris. You're supposed to finish on the upbeat. Now you're going to have to return with your joke. I was having a conversation the other day with someone at Huntington Bank, and we were talking about it. Glad to see all of our investment professionals here see that there is some opportunity, and the Valley definitely sees it. One of the things that does drive me a little bit nuts when we talk about it, when President Bush left office, we had if you add in the TARP, let's call it $9 trillion of debt. When President Trump took office, we had nearly $20 trillion of debt. And if we don't do something here in the next couple of years with the tax cut and some of the other things, then we can see $24 to $25 trillion of debt. Have to do something about it. And the repatriation of the dollars, I think, is a big one. That foreign direct investment in our valley is going to make a direct impact. And it's kind of those things to think about. How can we take advantage of what's coming, what's happened, and what's driving our market and things here? So this morning, we're pleased to have an expert in the shale and energy industry to share some insight about what's going on. It was about a decade ago, we all began hearing about the Marcellus and Utica shale plays and the impact it could have here in our valley and what that might mean to us, to your business, to our economy here locally. Since then, Youngstown Warren has become the supply chain capital for these shale plays. In fact, from 2010 to 2014, the region saw about $5 billion worth of investment and the creation of over 4,000 direct and indirect jobs in the supply chain companies specifically. Furthermore, just an hour from here in Monaca, Pennsylvania, Shell Petrochemical is building a $5 billion ethane cracker plant, the first of its kind here in the region, and that should be operational here in a couple years. And in Belmont, Ohio, again about an hour south of us, PTT, a company out of Thailand, is looking at building another one, and hopefully that process continues to move forward. In early 2017, there was a study done that indicated there was enough natural gas in the Utica and Marcellus shale to support 6 of these types of plants, these ethane cracker plants. It's about $30 billion roughly of investment here in our valley, the greater valley. If you think about it, that's mind-blowing. That kind of investment here plus what we talked about with Lordstown Energy and some of the other energy supplies, billion-dollar projects are sometimes once in a lifetime for a community. We're going to have multiple types of investments like this in the next few years. So with that being said, we're glad to welcome Dan Brockett to our forecast this morning. Dan is the Penn State Extension Shale Energy Education Team, lecturing and teaching on energy development from shale, the economics driving the process, the politics of hydraulic fracturing, and the associated impacts to communities, businesses, agriculture, land, and people. Dan has had the opportunity to provide training for industry, elected officials, businesses, investors, regulators, and landowners alike, and has spoken throughout the country and around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Valley welcome to Mr. Dan Brockett. Also, I forgot to mention that at 8:15 this morning, you got these slides in your email, so if you want to follow along, Dan's ready for questions too.
I didn't know you were going to get the slides, or I wouldn't have put these wild predictions in there. I'll tell you that already. So here's where wells are in the Appalachian Basin. This was updated as of the end of September. You can see those two stars. That the one farther north, of course, is the Shell Cracker, and the one farther south is the Belmont PTT Cracker, right? And you can see some patterns emerging here in terms of where wells are drilled over time. This is by year. If you can't follow those dots, then you're just normal, because they're really hard to see, okay? So this is this year's dots, just to highlight that. And you'll see we're kind of clustering in regions, right? But in particular, what's interesting here is we're going to see a little bit more of a cluster in this southwest Pennsylvania, southeast Ohio area. So this is 2018 as of September, so we can add a few more onto here, but we have almost 1,200 wells there. This was about a week and a half ago. I pulled this up last week. Since then, we've added a rig. And again, those are all horizontal rigs. Right there you can see. Everything is horizontal. Anything that's not horizontal these days is probably an injection well, which we're seeing a little further north in northeast Ohio here. So that might fit in where you're going. So the story about natural gas development in the Appalachian Basin has been for the last 5 years all about pipeline, okay? Because in the last 5 years, we were overproducing. So supply and demand, we were producing more than we use within the basin, right? So we needed a way to ship this gas out of here to level that price. I always got asked the question, why aren't our gas prices the same as this NYMEX Henry Hub report that I read in my Wall Street Journal every morning? We don't have a separate hub here that's tracked unless you buy an expensive subscription like I do. I wanted to point out to you, this is last year's price. October 13th happened to be my birthday. And Henry Hub, you can't see that up top, but right around $3 per MCF. And at that time, you can see the prices scattered throughout here, but somebody was selling gas as low as 10 cents, right? It's a little bit of an unfair comparison. This is the shoulder season for this business, any energy people in the room here. It's kind of that time where we aren't using a lot of we aren't heating or cooling a whole lot. So it's a little bit of a dead space. But this also goes to a lack of pipeline access. Interestingly enough, in January of this year, we saw the highest price ever paid domestically for an MCF of gas, okay? And Transco paid that January 4th, I believe. We had real heavy storms. They were paying $175 per MCF, okay, to power, for a power plant, right? And it's because we didn't have a pipeline. So we have gas 40 miles away that was selling for about $3, but we didn't have a pipeline to where that's at. Now, things have changed a little bit. So here's where we are today. We talked about oil a little bit in the previous discussion. You should know that oil and gas prices decoupled about 10 years ago. So for decades, these two prices rose and fell together. And about 10 years ago, they separated for good reason. So this price was, as of November 9th, a little closer to our date. Actually looked this up yesterday. We were in the 370 range. So that's doing pretty good. A big generalization here, but for the most part, producers say they're making money above 2. Okay? So everyone's making money today, so we should see more rigs if they feel like this local price is going to maintain itself. All right? Read just this morning, EIA, Energy Information Administration, in case you're looking for, good news, solid news, not good news all the time, but solid sources. EIA normally gets it right, okay, and they certainly try to. And EIA says that we are going to up our production considerably in the Appalachian Basin in 2019. So right now, we're looking at domestically, we're producing about 75 billion cubic feet per day out of the Appalachian Basin, and this is, Ohio, West Virginia, PA. We're making about 30 BCF per day. We're doing about 40% of that. We're expecting an increase of maybe 15, 20% next year, and don't be surprised if it goes a lot higher if we're able to maintain these type of prices. Okay, so I'm going to just skip through this because I have to be done soon, right? Drilling trends, one of the things, if you're looking at a per well basis, we're getting a lot more bang for our buck here because laterals are going longer. We've also gone from where we were producing about 5% of the gas in place in a well, okay, about 5%. Today we're producing 12 to 15%, depending where it's at. Okay, so that was just 7-8 years ago. Where do you think we're going to be in the future? I mean, this is going to top out at some point. But as technology and practice increase, I would expect that we're going to start tickling that 20% within a couple years. That's my guess, by the way. I wouldn't write that down because then you'd have it in writing, right? So it's all about pipeline, and as we've gotten more pipeline to be able to carry these to other areas, if you look around the country at gas price, it swings a little bit from area to area. As we build pipelines, it's like having ponds at different levels. We're trenching between those, and everyone's going to be at a similar level. So we can expect that deficit we suffered to NYMEX Henry Hub was really averaging about $1.50 an MCF for several years, okay? And now we're just slightly below that Henry Hub price, okay? So I mentioned gas in place, and I include these slides. I didn't know you were going to get a copy, or I probably would have left these out, okay? But Range Resources puts these out in their investor reports, so you can get them. You can get them updated, but they always stay the same. And just to interpret for you, that bright red in the Marcellus Shale says there's 125 to 150 billion cubic feet per square mile, okay? So that's a boatload of gas we got in there. You can also see, and this is important for the cracker part of our presentation, that wet and dry line. So everything to the east we expect to be dry natural gas, everything to the west is wet. That's important because this is an ethane cracker, and we're not expecting to get a lot of ethane out of dry gas. In fact, most producers are not going to bother to separate out that small amount of ethane that will probably be in there, okay? So if you are in a wet gas area, you might expect a little more drilling to keep up with maybe 2 cracker plants and also some additional exports of ethane. If you're in a dry gas area, it's not going to affect you. So here's the Point Pleasant interval, which we'll call Utica Shale. That red area is 75 to 100 billion cubic feet per square mile. These are Range Resources numbers, not mine. Again, if you pay attention to dry gas, wet gas, and oil, you'll see those approximate windows. By the way, those lines on there are mine. It's like a coloring book. You can tell they're not very precise. So that's our best estimate of where those things are, right? And then Upper Devonian, we don't talk much about this. I was trying to look up how much Upper Devonian gas are we actually producing today. And that number is really hard to get because we don't list it as that, okay? But this Upper Devonian shale also looks relatively exciting for southwest Pennsylvania, and that's 100 to 130 billion cubic feet per square mile. All right? So I'm just going to skip through some of these other than to tell you that within the same formation, we're getting oil, wet gas, dry gas due to time. And so here's all three of those stripes on the map. Those blue dots represent our cracker plants, et cetera, okay? So here's, we go into the cracker lecture, and if there's anybody who doesn't like chemistry, you can just close your eyes for a moment here. So when we're talking about dry gas, we're talking about that methane, C1H4. Are you keeping notes, son? You're out of class today. There's a test later on this, okay? So that we're talking about that methane. Everything else is a natural gas liquid, and what's important to us when we discuss cracker is that ethane, C2. Now that's important because it is the second most populous gas molecule of all the gases that we produce. And furthermore, we can't really use ethane for anything else, okay? It's a petrochemical use. So all of these things, all of these other natural gas liquids are easier to transport, and they have multiple uses, okay? Ethane is strictly, almost entirely a feedstock for petrochemical. And so we've been producing all this ethane, and really up until 2012, I believe, we didn't have a market for it. So it was rejected ethane, okay? And what rejected ethane, no one was throwing it away. It wasn't like a bad widget, all right? But it had to go into the gas stream. You got paid by the BTU, which was great, but we weren't getting our best and highest use out of this stuff, right? Oh, I got to tell you that I made this animation. It took me an ungodly amount of time, and just because I did, I had to show it to you, okay? There's more coming. So I'm going to take you on the path of this ethane molecule. So we are producing in wet gas areas, and that condensate falls out right at the well site. You probably are less interested in this than I am, but here's your natural gas liquids, and they're all going to fall out. So we go lightest to heaviest. You could also look at this as the value of these things gets higher as it gets heavier, okay? And this is the part that does have a correlation with the oil market, okay? So you can see back in 2014 when oil was trading about 105, 110 bucks a barrel, you can see these are our prices, okay? You can see our prices, we're tickling 100 for the heaviest stuff, okay? Now we're calling this condensate, but someone could also call it light sweet crude, all right? It depends how you want to label this stuff. What's the difference? The difference is the name, okay? It's all about API gravity weight in the end. So when we hit our lowest oil prices there, we were about 1/3 with our local condensate price too. So is it worthwhile drilling in these wet gas areas like you're in here? Well, it wasn't back in 2015, and that's why we saw a rig count down in this area. Now that went up, and earlier this year, just maybe a month ago, we were looking in the $75 a barrel range. Now we've slipped back down to about 60. But I just wanted to point out that we're still well above that low water mark there, right? Okay, I'm skipping through some of this stuff because I just need to, did you see this? Wait a second, did you see that? because the next step in the process is this fractionation. And we need to see more fractionation built if we're going to produce the amount of ethane that would be required, but just that one cracker plant plus the ethane exports that we do. So we're going to see more of these. These are more of a plug-and-play operation than they used to be. Okay, so they know how to build these for maximum effectiveness. You should just know that each one of these, C2, C3, C4, there's also an iso debutanizer, which is a very hard word to say, and so forth. And then you have condensate coming out the back end. Each one boils off at a different temperature, okay, different pressure and temperature. So it's like a big distillery, right? And each one comes out. I hope you have those memorized. That is on the quiz. There's a very bad picture I took of something there. So what we're doing with this stuff is making polyethylene pellets, which is why I brought this, okay? I want you to get an idea of what these are. I'm going to throw these out to you. If you catch them, you can keep them, okay? All right, so 7 new crackers started in North America. So we're going to go from kind of an undersupply to an oversupply, okay, of crackers and of polyethylene, right? Which means that we're probably going to have to export some of this if we have an oversupply. Now, the exciting thing for folks who are anywhere along this, the supply chain, plastics down, is this stuff should get considerably cheaper. There's some limitations to that, though, okay? Currently, we're paying above world average. We will be paying below world average, right? And not all these things are going to get built because, he said $5 billion cracker, because that was the announcement a little while ago. Now they've come back and said $6 billion. Every time you look up, they add another billion, right? Like it's chump change or something. But that's the investment start, right? So no one's going to build $4, $5, $6, $7 billion cracker plants for a 2-3 year market. It has to be, you have to be looking at decades of market. So this is all about, the only reason to build a cracker here is transportation cost. That's it. There is no more. We should be just, if we were looking at efficiencies, we'd build them all on the Gulf Coast, all right? They're ready for it. They know how to do it. They do it all the time. They have all the people there to man this thing. Construction cost is cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all about transportation cost. So my numbers may or may not be right, but they should be in the neighborhood. So we've got Sarnia, Ontario, and that's shipping right through this area up into Sarnia, 11 to 14 cents a gallon. The Gulf Coast, 16 to 19 cents a gallon, and local is 2 cents a gallon. It doesn't sound like that much until you recognize how many gallons per day. And we're also shipping some to Norway and Scotland. If you'd have heard a talk I did 3 years ago, I would say it's just not practical to export ethane. And I've been proven wrong again, so don't rely on any prediction I ever make, right? I told someone this earlier, the first time I saw a promo for Dancing with the Stars, I said, this will never work. What kind of moron would watch this show, right? So I'm not very good at this thing. Oh, here comes some more animation. That's ethane, right? So I'm just showing off now. If my boss knew what I did here, he'd say, get a real job, pal. So there's 2 things that go on at this cracker plant. One is we're going to crack that ethane molecule, and I've got some more animation to show you on that. That'll be exciting. So the intense heat, we're going to cook this to about 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit for a very brief amount of time. And that is going to take, so there's my ethane molecule. That's C2H6. Do you got that written down yet, or you got that memorized? C2H6, I'm going to put that tremendous amount of heat and pressure to that. And 2 hydrogen atoms are going to split off and form a stable hydrogen molecule. And I'm also going to form an unstable double bond, okay? And what I have now is ethylene, okay? I've just created ethylene, C2H4, with that double bond. It's still in a gas form. So the other thing that needs to occur at that cracker plant, okay, kind of a separate facility on the same ground, relatively close. We're going to ship that as a gas. We're going to put a lot of stress, heat, and pressure on that. And then, most importantly, we're going to add this initiator. And that initiator is going to change in both the type and the amount, depending on what product I want to come out to the other side. Now remember, everything that's being produced here is going to be polyethylene, but there's a lot of different varieties, and I'll get to that in a minute. Anybody here in the plastics industry, by the way? Oh, thank God, no one will know when I'm making stuff up here. Okay. So this is going to just keep repeating itself and form this long chain molecule, which is what I'm going to use to make my plastic wrap, my plastic buckets, those sorts of things, and I'll get into that. But again, I'm going to make a lot of different varieties of polyethylene. This is what they look like, right? Just like that. This happens to be high density. If I had low density, linear low density, medium density, it would all look alike from the back row, quite frankly. If you put it in your mouth and chew it, which I don't recommend, you could probably tell the difference between high density and low density, but that's what someone told me. I haven't done it myself. So how many grades of polyethylene are there? And this is, oh, here's some more animation. My God, I've ruined a good week doing this stuff. So it might surprise you that there are about 10,000 commercial grades of polyethylene on the market, right? 10,000 different grades of this stuff. So when we refer to it, you hear high density, low density, linear low density, medium density, and that's 4, right? But there's 10,000. In any given year, about 1,000 of those are going to come off the market, and about 1,000 are going to go on the market. And this is because these genius polymer scientists are always fooling with this stuff to do something with it. And if I can get that new film to last to get my chicken to last one more day at the supermarket, that translates into millions of dollars across the whole supermarket chain, right? If I can add a little polyethylene film in where something else was, and I can save a half penny per unit, the volume of stuff here is big, right? So I want to switch into where are our advantages in terms of being close to this thing. And this is a slide that's always published by various folks, and they have polyethylene consumption by state driven by converter locations. Now, converters, for those of you who aren't in the plastic industry, which is all of you, are people who take this stuff and make it into something useful, okay? So normally I'm going to dump this into a hopper, I'm going to heat it up, and then I'm going to make film, I'm going to injection mold, I'm going to do whatever with it next, either to make a garbage bag or a bucket or a plastic toy, anything it happens to be, right? So you can see those big dots, and you see that Ohio has this kind of distinctive advantage that you already have a great deal of converters in the state, right? And so that's helpful to know, and so I expect a lot of this product to start heading west out of that cracker plant, okay? But this might be important too, because if you look at, my thesis is based around transportation cost, right? And if you look at transportation costs, the actual consumer of the plastic is people. So probably some economist somewhere has a number on how many of those black garbage bags we use per person per year. It's population based. We probably really don't use any more or less of those in any particular population group. So if you look up here to our population centers, you'll see that this East Coast is where we have a lot of population. That's where we're going to ship our end product to. So if you are positioned to have transportation both ways, okay, if you have rail to your plant, if you have trucking to the East Coast, it seems to my mind as like a winning combination. I'm skipping through some of this fairly quick, but the question is just how much more ethane are we going to need to produce? I'll tell you that if we stripped all of the ethane out of the gas we're currently producing, we have enough. We have enough right now to power 2 cracker plants and do all of that shipping out of the basin that we want to. We will not do that, but the reason why that's important is most of the cost in developing polyethylene is at feedstock, which is ethane, right? All right, we talked about this already. Enough of that. What are you going to... Oh, I should go backwards on that. This is a commodity product. So folks, I've heard folks say, well, they're not going to engineer anything there. Well, certainly they will. If I'm putting $6 billion into a product, I want to sell the highest price that I can, right? I don't want to just sell the stuff that has the lowest margin. The stuff that has the highest margin is the stuff that's engineered, right? So the more engineered, the more specialty product, the more I can charge. Just like my iPhone probably has about 89 cents worth of material in it, but they're going to sell it for $1,000. It's the smarts you're paying for, right? But we're not going to produce 10,000 different grades of polyethylene at the Shell or the PTT cracker plant. My guess is, this is a guess, and I said it in front of Shell people, and they nodded their head. You know, they didn't say no, okay? My guess is they're going to do about 60 grades of polyethylene. Now, we might have some compounders who produce some different grades by doing their own additive outside of the Shell plant. But not all not all polyethylene products are going to use the grades that are produced. So one of the things that bothers me a little bit about some of the reporting I've seen on this is they say, hey, everything's made out of plastic and it's all going to come from this place. Only polyethylene, which is the biggest plastic product in the world, but it still only accounts for about 25%, okay? And not all polyethylene. So we know, for now anyway, they're not going to make PVC, right? They're not going to make medical grade. They are going to make food grade. So those are the things that they have disclosed, right? Here's just some quick examples of those sorts of things. And those processes, and you guys are rich up toward, as you go closer to the lake, actually, you're rich in a lot of plastics manufacturing and support services for that, right? So those are those different things. So logistics, trucking might make sense up to 100, 200 miles. It's also going to depend on what kind of trucking, you know, if I have to, if I've got a straight shot and I'm going a little farther. But we're anticipating a lot of it's going to go by rail. We were talking earlier, a lot of folks have tried to get out of rail. This product makes sense to rail car, okay? Top loading, bottom unloading rail car. By the way, this is a model, not a real rail car, because I tried to take a picture of a real rail car, and they came over and said each one has a unique identification. We're going to tackle you to the ground and beat you if you take a picture. So that's a model of one instead. So here's our rail, and we've got this kind of robust rail system throughout here, a little closer to home. Now, these blue and black lines are Class 1 rail. Class 1 rail sounds like it should be served with a glass of champagne or something like that, right? It's a little fancier, maybe. No, they classify this by your net worth, the net worth of that company. So there's really no reason that short line can't be used on and off. So this could be used for big and small manufacturers and so forth. Unless you're getting it, if you're getting a Gaylord of plastic, you're probably not going to want to use rail, but a lot of other folks will because it's cheaper. So my estimate is 50 train cars per day will be leaving that Shell cracker plant. I'm just focusing on Shell because PTT still hasn't announced, unless I missed that announcement. So 50 train cars per day. What else are we going to need outside of a cracker plant? Well, additional ethane, we talked about, de-ethanization. Ethane-only pipeline, so that's going to be come as purity ethane to those cracker plants. No one's going to fractionate it at the plant. Underground storage for ethane. We have that for methane, our dry gas, in order to avoid peaks and valleys in production of this size. We're going to need that. A lot of warehousing, transportation, and then to this bottom thing, new facilities for existing customers, assuming that we have a lot more of this, okay, and it's a lot cheaper for manufacturers, then can we assume that existing polyethylene manufacturers are going to grow their market and make more product, right? And then additional customers. So Shell announced, which was crazy to me, they announced in 2016, they said, well, 80% of this stuff is already spoken for. Now, I don't expect a single pellet of polyethylene to drop until 2021, and they already have an 80% commitment, which is pretty astounding. But there is that additional 20%, and that 20%, you might, well, why are you concentrating on the small? That's 10 rail cars a day of polyethylene pellets. There's a lot there. I also mentioned support industries and transport. We already talked about that. So what could come to a region like this? Well, any manufacturing process, okay, we're talking about any new development. By the way, when we talk about existing customers, 80% spoken for, does that mean that there's some manufacturer in a southern state who might move a new facility up this way? I don't know, okay? But if my cost of manufacturing is less than my cost of transportation, it might make sense to do so. We're also maybe going to see some value-added producers and services develop locally. It makes sense to put them near plastic manufacturing. And then a lot of support services for manufacturing, tool and die, trucking, compounders, labs, testing equipment, services, packaging, distribution, et cetera. Some of those are very high skill and some very low skill professions. What's happening right now, even though we're well into construction of the cracker plant, we still see our craft unions calling for more workers, right? That is about a month old, that headline I pulled up there. We're also going to need these production facilities, and we're going to need these skills that currently don't exist in the Northeast, okay? Because why would anyone with these skills be in the Northeast right now? So this plastics, polymer science, lab and testing service, and polyethylene manufacturing, we're going to need a lot of those things to occur. All right, did I finish in time? Did I run really long? I see people leaving. Dissatisfied customer, sir? Is that something off-color joke? All right, do we have time for questions, or are we done? We're done. Whew.
You know, being up here with these 90-pound brains, I was drawn back to a conversation with my 8-year-old. She always provides me some levity, so we talked about it, Dan. But where does a germ go on vacation? Germany. That was bad. Well, you know, it's the weather. I don't know. It's my fault. I'd like to ask Sarah Boyarko to come back up, introduce our guest and the award. Sarah.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Once again, the Regional Chamber has partnered with Magnet to celebrate a Valley manufacturing firm making significant strides in their industry. I'd like to invite Darlene McDermott to the podium to announce the 2018 award recipient.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and good morning. I have to say it's great to be here. This is the third time in my career that I've had the opportunity to serve the Valley, and I really enjoyed the presentation actually on the cracker plant. I've had an opportunity to work in the oil and gas industry from a risk management perspective and was the national director for Keystone for workforce and workers' comp. So thank you for that. And I'm also proud to be here, and I appreciate Sarah's work. And without any further ado, I don't often read, but I will this morning because it's so well written and it's such a great story to tell about our award recipient. So bear with me as I do read, but we took some time to make sure to hit the high points of a very successful story of a company that many of you might know well and has been around the Valley for almost 50 years. So this morning, ladies and gentlemen, it is quite an honor to present the Regional Chambers and Magnet's second annual Excellence in Manufacturing Award. The criteria for the award focused on company history, growth, areas in which the business excelled, and the very new products and services that the company created. We had many excellent submissions, and we do appreciate that, and our award committee had a very tough time coming down to one winner. And so, we are especially proud to present this award to a local company that has been in business in the Valley for nearly 50 years. The Haltech Corporation was founded in Salem in 1970 and has been a leader in the tire valve industry since that time. When underground mines were transitioning from rail wheels to rubber tires, Haltech was there to design and manufacture the tire valve systems required to meet their technical needs. Many new product innovations were introduced at that time. Haltech was leading the way, including the full flow and super large bore valve designs, which provided the tire industry the unique products required to achieve faster flow rates, decreased downtime, and more efficient tire management. The ever-increasing size of mining and the construction tires that were needed further challenged Haltech Engineering to design and manufacture its variety of valve stems and systems to meet these ongoing demands. The company, which has steadily grown over the years, employs 120 people and is expanding its operations at the World Trade Park in Latonia. It takes great pride in listening to its customers' problems and needs, and it also takes great pride in designing solutions and innovative products to help address both customer demands. For example, in 2015, Haltech sat down with Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores and started to develop the Tire Pass lane that is still used today. Love's Tire Pass lanes are an on-highway provider of fuel and truck services with a national footprint. As Love's was looking for a concept for better tire management, Haltech answered the call, and they created a system in which a truck coming into fuel would have access to a tire management service for tire inspection. This program launched in 2016 under a joint patent between Haltech and Love's, and the Tire Pass uses customized tire inflators that Haltech develops internally. This year, Haltech launched Tire Pass 2.0, an entirely new software platform that better inspects and reports more efficiently. Haltech launched 2.0 at all Tire Pass locations at all lanes nationwide. In reward for its efforts, Haltech has received Love's 2016 Vendor of the Year honor. Haltech also received the Caterpillar Supplier Quality Excellence Award for 3 consecutive years, from 2015 to 2017. And the Safety and Health Achievement Recognition Program they were also awarded for, which recognizes small employers that operate an exemplary safety and health management system. Haltech is one of about 29 companies in the state of Ohio that achieved this rare status. I personally cannot tell you how pleased I am to honor the Haltech Corporation and their leader, who we will call up here in just a moment. And I know that the Youngstown Greater Chamber is also very honored to honor Haltech. We hope that you've enjoyed learning more about the company and its latest endeavors. And without any further ado, I would like to call up the leader of Haltech and congratulate Dave Caruso.
First of all, thank you to James and the Regional Chamber and Darlin for even considering us for this award. It's certainly a great honor. And, thanks to Sarah and Kim for coordinating this. Mariah, the young lady sitting over here, took the time to fill out everything and make the Chamber aware of what we're doing when she was an intern at Haltech. Now she's our World Trade Compliance person because we're a little bit more concerned about the tariffs than Chris is. So, but we'll see how that works out. We're going to just test my public speaking a little bit. I don't do this often. I got to do it at my son's wedding a few weeks ago, but everybody was like into their third bottle of wine, I think, right? So I was pretty funny then to everybody, but we'll give it a shot. As she said, we started in business in 1970. I started with a company in 1986. In 1986, we did about $1 million in sales. This year, between our partnerships with Haltech and a few other companies that I'll mention, we'll do close to $60 million in sales, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank our partners at PNC for believing in us 10 years ago when we were really going down the road to trying to explode our business. So thank you guys. I know you're here somewhere. Our customers are, we manufacture, design tire valves for everyone except automobiles, right? So when you leave here and go down the road and you pass a tractor trailer, every one of those wheels has a Haltech valve in it. Because of our relationship with Freightliner, Volvo, Mack, Peterbilt, Kenworth, all the manufacturers, we also deal direct with many of the fleets. So Swift, UPS, FedEx, J.B. Hunt. And to give you a little bit of the scope, right, Swift alone has 700,000 wheel positions on the road. So that's a lot of tires, and that's just one of the companies. As the tires get a little bit bigger, right, we have 100% of the business at John Deere in Case for tractors. We're most well known in the mining and construction industry with Caterpillar, Komatsu. All U.S. military vehicles have Haltech valves, right, made by Oshkosh or AM General. And then last year we got into endeavor where every Delta Airlines plane we now supply with tire valves. So a lot of different industries that we're involved in, and it's really helped with our growth. As she said, we have a complete line of inflation equipment and tire management system at Penske locations, Valvolines, discount tires, along with the Love's Tire Pass that was mentioned. In the last 5 years, outside of our great growth at Haltech, we've also purchased a lug nut company in Cleveland, Ohio, so we, attach the tires to the vehicle. A company in Brooksville, Florida that has bead braking equipment. So that would be equipment that takes tires and rims apart during maintenance. And last year we acquired a company in Limerick, Ireland that manufactures Bluetooth torque wrenches. So every torque measurement that's taken, now we have accountability. It's very important if you go down the road, you don't want to see a tire coming at you, right? So you want to make sure that they're torqued in a proper manner. We take a lot of pride in being the #1 specialty tire company in the world. We're shipping right now to 45 countries, and every major mining operation in the world also uses our equipment. She mentioned the Caterpillar Platinum Supplier Award, and we're real proud of that and the fact that Caterpillar has around 5,000 suppliers, and when we got the award 4 years ago, we were one of 50 companies to get that award. Our 4th consecutive year will be this year. We're one of only 4 of all of their suppliers worldwide that's done that. So it's a very, very nice feather in our cap. We're an ISO 9000, one with design company, also ISO 14001 for environment, along with the SHARP certification for safety and health. I don't know if you were watching the slides when we came in, we did just purchase a 20,000 square foot office building in the Latonia Industrial Park, and we'll be building a 50,000 square foot manufacturing facility, breaking ground in the spring of next year. So we're really, really excited about the new growth opportunities that are ahead of us. Lastly, we partnered with a company just in the last 6 months called Retired. So they take motorcycle tires, right, old ones, and that are going to be scrapped, and they make furniture out of them. So now we're selling this furniture to Pep Boys and Discount Tire for their lobbies, and just a lot of new outside the box things that I always get a kick when we all said it, right? We can't, young kids, you can't get them to do anything. Young kids, we hire a lot of young people and put them in positions to come up with new ideas, and they've just done a super, super job with innovation for us. The last thing we did last year, we signed a licensing agreement with Wilson, right? So for all the tires that we fill up around the world, we're now filling up every sports ball that Wilson makes. So if you go to Walmart or anywhere and buy a ball, we've filled up that ball before it gets there. But the fun part about that one is we have a licensing agreement with Wilson, and we are at every NFL stadium, we're in charge of the inflation, deflation, and maintaining the pressure of the footballs for football games. So that's really been a kind of a nice, another thing what some of the young guys came up with. It's kind of, yeah, thanks to Brady, right? So brought some money to our economy. So anyhow, thank you again, everyone. It's really an honor for me to get this award. And lastly, we do have a football here that we brought. And this is a handmade football in Ada, Ohio, right, from Wilson. And it's kind of ironic. A guy named Marino won the football, right? So I don't know where he is. He's up here somewhere. Maybe he left. I don't know. John Marino? Who won once? Who was he with? First National? Yeah. Does anybody know him? Does anybody? Yeah, okay, you could give John the ball. He signed up, so he was the winner. So, all right. Well, again, thank you very much. It's a great honor for us.
All right, Dave, congratulations once again. Thank you to you and your team at Haltech for all of your hard work and the longevity in our valley. We wish you much ongoing success as you get ready to celebrate 50 years and continue to grow. Another piece of excellence in the valley. And Darlin and Magnet, thank you as well for coming and your partnership and working with us to promote and help present the significant honor. I'd like to thank Dan and Chris for your comments, and most importantly, I'd like to thank the staff, help put on that video and see what great things are happening here in the valley. Not only where we've been, but where we're going. The future is bright. Companies like Haltech are here, growing and staying strong. I'd like to thank you all for coming. If you have a minute or you want to come up and talk to any of our guests, they'll be here for a little bit, and you want to see some non-edible plastic pellets, we've got those as well. Thank you. Have a great week.